Father-in-law demanded me $4,000 every month, pushed me down the stairs, thought I would stay quiet. But I shocked them with lawyers. You want $3,000 more? After I already give you $4,000 every month? I said that trembling, seconds before my father-in-law tried to destroy me. Like a king giving an order, he folded his arms across his chest and leaned back in his recliner. I need a new car, he said in a matter-of-fact, clipped voice. The old one's falling apart. I don't see what the big deal is. You've got the money. My chest constricted. The big deal, Noah, is that I've already sacrificed enough for this household. I cover the bills, the groceries, your utilities. I even helped pay off Adam's credit cards. Now you want me to buy you a car? Yes, he said, raising his voice. Because I deserve it. I've done enough for this family. It's time for you to pull your weight. Do my share. I felt like I was slapped by the words. For years, I had been providing for this family by working non-stop while my father-in-law and my husband Adam regarded my paycheck as if it were a bottomless ATM. And now, Noah dared to accuse me of being selfish the one time I established a boundary. I'm not doing it, I firmly stated, refusing to back down. You'll have to figure out another way. The vein in his forehead bulged as his face contorted with anger. You're just like your mother, always thinking you're better than everyone else. His movements were aggressive and sharp, and he stood up suddenly. Don't you dare disrespect me in my own house. Your house? I retorted, trembling. This house is paid for with my money, Noah. He sprang forward and shoved me with both hands before I could respond. I was tumbling down the stairs when I felt my feet slip on the hardwood floor. My body ached, and the world became hazy. My head thumping from the impact, my arm twisted beneath me, I landed hard at the bottom. I was immobile for a moment. Tears stung my eyes as I struggled to breathe, and the pain was unbearable. Noah was standing at the top of the stairs above me, his face still twisted in rage. Then he spit out, "That's what happens when you don't respect me," and strode back into the living room. I thought Adam would come running over to help me up or at the very least check on me. However, he looked blank, almost bored, when he reached the top of the stairs. He shrugged and remarked, "Maya, you should have just given him the money. You know how he gets. My name is Maya, and I have been the breadwinner of a disrespectful household for the last 4 years. I believed that Adam and I were creating a life together, so I married him. However, it soon became evident that his father, Noah, was the center of his priorities. I agreed to move in with Noah to help out when his health started to deteriorate. I was unaware that helping out meant paying for everything, including Noah's personal expenses, food, utilities, and rent. I initially believed it to be transient. Even though Adam and Noah didn't always express it, I told myself that they valued what I was doing. However, their sense of entitlement increased over time. Adam said he had to be at home to help his father, so he completely quit working. Noah, on the other hand, started to demand more and more, acting as though my paycheck was his own. I stayed though, it was for the family's benefit, I told myself. But as I lay bruised and aching at the bottom of those stairs, I came to terms with the reality. There was no family here. It was a one-sided arrangement in which my worth was determined only by my contributions. And I was finished. That evening, I prepared a bag. With my heart racing with a mixture of fear and resolve, I gathered my belongings and left the room without saying anything to Adam or Noah. The pain of their treachery is still very much present. I knew I couldn't stay, but I wasn't sure where I was heading. I grabbed my phone and sat on the edge of the bed after checking into a motel. The weight of what had just transpired was bearing down on me. However, I refused to let it break me. I had been their rock and their safety net for years. They wouldn't be the same without me, and I wasn't going to catch them this time. The following morning I called. I said, "Angela," when the attorney responded. "I need your help. It's about my husband and his father." It felt like the first time I had breathed fresh air in years when I met my lawyer, Angela. I told her everything, including how Noah had insisted on more money for a car, how I had been paying for all household expenses, and how the argument had ended with me at the bottom of the stairs. She listened intently. Then Angela raised an eyebrow and said, "You've been financially supporting your husband and father-in-law entirely on your own?" I gave a nod. "For the past 4 years. Every bill, every expense, everything comes out of my pocket." Looking through her notes, she questioned, "And your name is on the mortgage or deed of the house?" I stated, "It's all in my name," in a firm tone. "They couldn't qualify for the loan without me. I pay for it. I own it." A tiny smile of knowing curled Angela's lips. "Then this is your house, Maya. Not theirs. We'll start with eviction papers for both of them. I felt a mixture of satisfaction and guilt when I considered evicting Adam and Noah. I had persuaded myself that I was acting morally for years by putting their needs ahead of my own. However, that night on the stairs, I came to the realization that loyalty and kindness were meaningless to those who viewed me as nothing more than a tool. I said, "What about Noah pushing me? He could have seriously hurt me." Angela stated resolutely, "We'll include that in the lawsuit. You're not just evicting them, you're holding them accountable for their behavior. Let's make sure you get justice." The weeks that followed were filled with preparation. Angela assisted me in obtaining all the documentation I required to bolster my argument, including bank statements, receipts, and even text messages in which Noah and Adam made their rightful demands. It was both reassuring and frustrating to see everything presented in black and white. I had been telling myself for years that I was exaggerating and that things weren't as horrible as they appeared. However, the figures were honest. Adam and Noah had only offered criticism and grievances, but I had invested tens of thousands of dollars in that house. Additionally, Angela urged me to record the stairway incident. She stated, "We'll have to demonstrate that there has been a history of abusive or threatening behavior. Money isn't the only factor here. It's about establishing a secure environment for your future." Secure. I was surprised by how hard the word hit me. I had neglected my physical and emotional safety for years in favor of other people's needs. I was fighting for myself for the first time. I began quietly planning to start over in the interim. I started moving my belongings covertly, one carload at a time, to a tiny apartment near my place of employment. I stayed as far away from Adam and Noah as I could because the house still felt like a minefield. Adam was hardly aware that I was gone. The majority of his time was spent glued to the couch or debating something with his father. Noah, meanwhile, was still upset that I had declined to purchase a car for him. It felt like a tightrope walk every time I interacted with him. But I didn't back down. Setting up the legal bombshell they would never have anticipated was the last piece of the puzzle. Angela prepared a civil lawsuit for damages related to the assault and financial exploitation, as well as eviction papers that would require them to leave the house within 30 days. She cautioned, "They won't take this well. Be ready for some criticism." With my resolve solidifying, I declared, "I'm ready. For too long, they have been pushing me around." Keeping my plans to myself was the most difficult aspect. I appeared distracted to my coworkers, but I dismissed their worries with evasive justifications about domestic stress. In actuality, I felt as though I was leading two separate lives. While one of me was discreetly regaining her independence, the other was still acting like the lovely wife and daughter-in-law. In my new apartment, I would lie awake in the middle of the night, reliving every moment. The hurt and rage would seethe inside me, threatening to overtake me. I would then consider the time I would deliver the documents to them. I saw their faces, Adam's apathy turning to incredulity, Noah's arrogant confidence crumbling, and it gave me the willpower to press on. At last the day arrived. As we walked up the driveway, Angela's cool professionalism grounded me as she met me at the house. As she rang the doorbell, the pile of papers in her hand felt heavier than it should have, and my heart raced. When Noah opened the door and saw me standing next to Angela, his face instantly turned sour. "What are you looking for?" he yelled. Angela never skipped a beat. "Mr. You've been served, Williams," she said, passing the documents to him. "Within 30 days, you and your son must leave this property. In addition, my client is suing you in civil court for financial exploitation and assault-related damages." "What on earth is this?" Noah flipped through the papers and barked, his face flushed. "This is not possible for you. This is my home." "No," I said, maintaining a steady tone of voice in spite of my chest thumping. "It's my home. Additionally, you are no longer welcome here." Rubbing his eyes as if he had just woken up, Adam emerged in the doorway. "What's happening?" he muttered. The papers were thrust at him by Noah. "Your wife believes she can expel us. Is this unbelievable?" Adam furrowed his brow as he skimmed the papers. "This is crazy, Maya. You can't just—" I looked him in the eye and interrupted. "I can." And I did. They were silent for a moment. I could see the panic beginning to seep into their faces as the situation's reality set in. They couldn't just dismiss this argument or use guilt to get me to comply with their demand. They were powerless to stop this from happening. Angela gestured for me to follow her as she turned to go. She declared, "They've been served. Leave now." I felt as though the burden of years of abuse had been lifted as I left. I felt free for the first time in years. As I sat in my car across the street, watching Angela approach the door for the last time, the house felt uncannily quiet. She had demanded that the official lawsuit and notice of eviction enforcement be delivered by her. I had been waiting for this moment. The time when Noah and Adam would at last understand the seriousness of their actions. I watched Angela ring the doorbell and hold the papers with assurance. Noah opened the door a few moments later, his face changing from annoyance to bewilderment to unadulterated fury. I could hear his voice erupting even from my car. "This is absurd." With his fists clenched at his sides, he roared. "She can't harm me like this. This house has been my home for many years." Angela's tone stayed composed and businesslike. "Mr. Williams, this property is entirely owned by my client, Maya, as I mentioned when we last served you. Your 30-day notice is over. Additionally, you are legally obligated to leave as of right now. Any non-compliance will lead to additional legal action." Behind him, Adam emerged. He moaned as he squinted at the papers Angela gave him, his face still swollen from sleep and his hair unkempt. "Maya, seriously, what is all this?" Angela did not recoil. "This is a civil lawsuit for damages totaling $20,000, including compensation for the physical assault, financial exploitation, and emotional distress caused by both Mr. Williams and Mr. Adam Williams. These proceedings will move forward regardless of whether you vacate today." I could see Noah's rage boiling over as his face turned beet red. He grabbed the papers out of Adam's hands, tore them in two, and tossed the fragments on the porch. He yelled, "You think this is going to scare me? You can't evict family. This is my house." Angela remained motionless. "That's for the court to decide, Mr. Williams. But for now, the sheriff's department will be here shortly to ensure that the eviction is carried out." I saw Adam standing behind Noah, wide-eyed and in a panic, before he slammed the door in her face. He appeared to realize for the first time that this wasn't just another dispute that could be settled. There was no escape from this reality. Angela went back to the car and slid into the passenger seat, her steps deliberate. "They're fuming," she said, grinning wryly. "But I doubt they'll try anything stupid. The sheriff will handle it from here." I released a long breath that I had been holding without realizing it. I had been caught in a vicious cycle of caving in and allowing their disrespect, abuse, and entitlement to wear me down for years. Now, however, I was in charge for the first time. It felt good, but it felt alien. I gave myself permission to visualize the scene inside the house while we waited for the sheriff. Noah was pacing hysterically and complaining about how unfair everything was. To avoid interacting, Adam most likely slouched on the couch and browsed through his phone. Adam had always followed Noah's instructions. I cleaned up the mess, and they had always had the same dynamic. However, that is no longer the case. Noah screamed at the officers about how he had been wronged and rushed outside when the sheriff's car arrived. He yelled, "She's lying. This is my house, I've lived here for decades. She can't just throw me out like this." Angela handed him the paperwork, which the lead officer calmly went over. "This property is legally in Ms. Maya's name, and these eviction proceedings are valid," he insisted. "You've been given ample notice, Mr. Williams. You need to gather your belongings and vacate immediately." Noah screamed, his voice full of rage, "I won't. You'll have to drag me out of here." At last, Adam came out with a hurriedly packed duffel bag. His expression was a mix of confusion and rage as he glanced at me from the other side of the street. He yelled, "Why are you doing this, Maya? We're family." Family was a word that sliced through me like a blade. For years, they had twisted its meaning to support their disrespect and entitlement, using it as a weapon. However, I was determined not to be held captive by it any longer. I exited the car and looked directly into Adam's eyes with a level of composure I wasn't aware I possessed. "Family doesn't push you down the stairs," I stated steadily. "Family doesn't take your money and treat you like you owe them everything. This house is mine. My life is mine. And I won't let either of you take anything more from me." I didn't hear Noah yelling something unintelligible from the porch. I looked at Adam, who looked at me for a long time before lowering his gaze. He didn't have a comeback for once, no justifications. With his father still yelling behind him, he slung the duffel bag over his shoulder and trudged down the driveway without saying another word. Angela put a comforting hand on my shoulder as the sheriff's officers led Noah back inside to collect his things. "You've done it," she uttered softly. "This chapter is over?" I was overcome with feelings of relief, pride, and an overwhelming sense of freedom as I watched Adam and Noah leave the house for the last time. This was more than just a legal win. I considered it a win for myself. I had defeated those who had attempted to denigrate me for the first time in years. A tiny smile tugged at my lips as I turned to face Angela. "Let's go," I said. "I've got a life to rebuild." The absence of Noah and Adam made the house feel so much bigger. I was struck by how different everything seemed without their constant presence as I moved through the silent rooms. The area that had previously felt confining felt like a blank canvas, a place I could at last call my own. The last remnants of their entitlement had been taken with the sheriff when he left a short time ago. Up until the very end, Noah had resisted, complaining about the unfair treatment he had received. However, he had nothing left to hold on to. A shadow of the man who had once pledged to start a life with me, Adam had been more reserved. It had been bittersweet to watch him go, pulling his duffel bag down the driveway. I was no longer angry, only pitying. As I locked the front door, Angela remained by my side. Her tone was warm as she said, "You've done something not many people have the courage to do. It's hard to walk away from people you've invested so much in, even when they don't deserve it." As her words sank in, I nodded. "I think I finally realized it wasn't just about the money," I replied. "It was about taking back control. For years, I let them make me feel like I didn't have a choice. Like I owed them everything. But I don't owe them anything." I started to piece my life back together over the course of the following few days. To help get rid of the tangible reminders of Noah and Adam's presence, I hired a cleaning service and changed the locks on the house. Erasing the mess they had left behind felt symbolic, almost healing. I didn't feel alienated in my own house for the first time in years. Coworkers and friends contacted me to see how I was doing and to offer words of support and encouragement. Lily said, "You're amazing for standing up for yourself," one afternoon while they were having coffee. "It would have been so easy to just keep putting up with it, but you didn't." I confessed, "I think I just reached a breaking point." When Adam told me I should have given Noah the money, I realized he didn't care about me at all. And if he didn't care, then why was I giving so much of myself to him? Lily gave a nod. "It's hard to see that when you're in it, but you're out now. That's what matters." I once had calls from Noah and Adam, but I didn't answer. Angela gave me her word that they had no legal basis to contest the lawsuit or the eviction. She declared, "You've already won." And I took her word for it. I felt untouchable for the first time in a long time. I turned my attention to the future. I began looking into new hobbies and career options that I had put off for too long. I had more time and energy to devote to myself since I wasn't burdened by their demands. I even started thinking about selling the house, my house, and relocating. Somewhere where the ghosts of the past were not present. I took some time to think back on the path that had led me here one evening while enjoying a glass of wine on the patio. Although it hadn't been simple at all, each step and each difficult moment had taught me something about my own resilience. I had allowed other people to determine my value for years. However, that is no longer the case. With the stars just starting to appear in the sky, I gazed out at the peaceful street. I felt completely free for the first time in years. I was at last living this life according to my own terms. After a few months, everything in my life had changed drastically. The house where Noah and Adam used to live no longer felt like a prison. Now it was mine, really mine. The life I was reconstructing for myself was reflected in every nook and cranny. Peace and quiet now filled the walls that once echoed with their entitlement and demands. I had finally decided to list the house for sale, which felt like a permanent end to that chapter. The lawsuit against Noah was moving forward in my favor, and Angela assisted me in overcoming the financial and legal obstacles. There was more to the compensation I could expect than just financial gain. The goal was to make him answerable. The knowledge that he would be held accountable for his actions brought a sense of closure in and of itself. Things felt lighter in my new apartment. I finally had the time and energy to devote to myself without the constant weight of their expectations. I resumed my yoga practice, picked up painting again, and even organized a trip to a peaceful seaside town that I had always wanted to see. I felt like I was living, not just surviving, for the first time in years. My loved ones became aware of the shift. Lily remarked, "You look happier," during one of our coffee dates. "Like a weight's been lifted." "Because it has," I grinned and replied. For years, I thought walking away meant giving up. But now I realize it was the bravest thing I've ever done. She made a fictitious toast with her cup. "To brave new beginnings." I added, "To never settling for less," as I pressed my cup to hers. I was no longer troubled by Noah and Adam's absence. I stopped thinking about what had happened that night on the stairs and stopped questioning whether I had made the correct decision. I was certain that I had. Despite their attempts to minimize me, their actions ultimately strengthened me. I was able to move on without their explanations or apologies. They had nothing to do with the new life I had created, and that was sufficient. A few weeks later, the lawsuit's final verdict was rendered. Damages were ordered to be paid by Noah. And even though I didn't think he would ever voluntarily take responsibility, the decision provided me with closure. It was a formal recognition of all that I had gone through. An affirmation that my story was significant. I stood in the empty living room one last time on the day I gave the house's keys to the new owners, allowing the memories to pass. The hurt, the betrayal, the anger, all of it was still there. But I was no longer under its control. I regained my authority. And in doing so, I rediscover who I am. I experienced a calmness I hadn't experienced in years as I went outside and shut the door. The path ahead was clear and paved with opportunities. And I was eager to see where it would take me for the first time in a long time. This marked the conclusion of more than one chapter. It was the start of a story that was all mine. Thanks for watching and sticking around till the end.